Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're here joining us live, leave a comment in the chat box and say hi. If you're new here, I'm Vanessa. I'm a YA fantasy, paranormal, and horror writer and book publisher. Um, so on this channel, I talk a lot about writing and all things book related. So today's live stream is part of my Writing Diversity series. This is a series I created to help writers learn how to write diverse characters. So in today's live stream, I'm going to be here chatting with Sam from the YouTube channel The Son of Dog, and we're going to be talking about writing atheist characters. So Sam, do you want to say hi and give a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you, Vanessa, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I'm an atheist. I run a YouTube channel called The Son of Dog YouTube channel, which is a comedy, entertainment, theological philosophy kind of channel. It explores topics that surround religion and atheism, as well as my deconversion from Christianity. So, the channel is a little bit of everything, and it's kind of my own personal channel to do what I want, but it's mainly directed around those subjects. So yeah, if you want to go check it out, I'm sure Vanessa will have it in the link. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. And as a writer myself, we were just talking a little bit. I do a little bit of writing, so I hope I can help anyone out that is trying to write an atheist character.
Awesome. Great. So, before we get started here, just a quick disclaimer that I always start with in these videos, but I want to remind everyone that no group is a monolith. So Sam is here graciously sharing with us his experience as an atheist and what it was like leaving his faith. And hopefully this will help other writers out there who may want to write atheist characters, but keep in mind that his experiences do not represent all atheist people. So always, always, always make sure you do your research well and you get sensitivity readers for your stories. So now with that out of the way, we can get to the questions. So the first one that I have here, so I've been watching your channel for a while, I think kind of since you first started. And in your videos, you've shared that you were a fundamental Southern Baptist Christian for over 20 years before leaving and becoming an atheist. So before we get to what led you to become an atheist, can you share a bit about what it was like for you when you were a Christian, and what did your life look like? What were some of the beliefs you held?
Sure. I'll try to make it as concise as possible because obviously there's a lot to dig in here. But when I was very young, I wasn't raised like a lot of Christians are Christians from like when they're old enough to start hearing about it. But I wasn't a Christian until I was around 7 or 8. Um, and that's when my mom kind of went back to Christianity, because before that she wasn't a Christian. She was a Christian when she was young, but she kind of strayed away from the church for a while during like the middle of her life a little bit, and then she had me kind of later in her life, and she leaned right back into Christianity very hard when I was around 7, 8. That's when I became born again as well. And we started attending church regularly. And then when I got a little bit older, I got put in a private Christian church school for 4 years. And so that was a whole another level of an experience as far as religious teaching and indoctrination in that regard. But the beliefs of specifically the Southern Baptist Church, they're pretty fundamental as it stands already. They have a very literalistic approach to the Bible. Things are taken literally. God created the earth in 7 actual 6 actual days on the seventh, resting. Like it wasn't, millions of years to creation. It was 7 actual days. Adam and Eve were real people. They weren't metaphors like a lot of other denominations of Christians, sometimes believe. So very literal approach to scripture. And of course, everything that comes with that. So, there's a lot of kind of, misogynistic tendencies kind of baked into a lot of the preaching and a lot of the scripture, because they're literally taking it from the page and just hand delivering it, out of the sermon, So there's really not a lot of, I guess, there's always interpretation, but there's not a lot of like sauce on top of that. There's not a lot of mental gymnastics to try to make things fit. It's just the Bible is right and inerrant, and anything that goes against the Word of God is not true, essentially. And Southern Baptist churches, for the most part, they can be big, they can be small. Actually, was just another writer had actually emailed me recently, because he's writing a book about a fictional book, but it involves one of the main characters is a Southern Baptist preacher, and he was asking me about what it was like, because he doesn't know. He was a deconverted Catholic, so I had to kind of tell the same kind of things I'm telling you guys right now. So a lot of the beliefs I held, I was telling him as well, and it's basically the inerrancy of Scripture, the gospel itself, Jesus being sent by God the Father to die for our sins, and that's the only way to heaven, and that he's coming again, and to witness and to be a witness to everyone you can. So that was essentially what we believed. And I won't go on any further than that, but it's kind of a basic fundamental Christianity.
Right. So what, growing up in that belief and that faith system, and after believing for over 20 years, what made you change your mind?
Sure. Well, to preface this, and I don't know if you've heard this before. I may have talked about it in some of my videos, that belief itself isn't a choice. You're either convinced or you're not convinced about something. So I was in the point in my life when I had the luxury of taking some time and really considering what I believed for the first time, considering why I believed it and not just what I believed. I had the luxury of being in a job where I could kind of just be alone with my thoughts while I was working. And so this allowed me to really take stock of my beliefs. And I started listening to a lot of debates. I started listening to atheism versus theism debates, and of course, watching these as a Christian, being at first on the side of, the Christian apologist or the Christian writer or whoever was, doing these debates. And, but then, after that, I was rereading the Bible again as I was going through all these, I had all these thoughts and these questions, and I was kind of like, why do I believe what I believe? Not just I know what I believe, but I've always kind of taken it for granted. I never really stopped and tried to get to the foundational reasons for my beliefs. So I was able to explore that over the period of around half a year. And through that half of a year process, there was no bad experience. A lot of people say, what was a bad experience that happened that, made you an atheist, and it wasn't anything like that. So, take note of that. If you're writing an atheist character, it's not all, oh, he's bitter at God or he had something bad happen to him, because that's just simply not true. And that's a very surface level interpretation of, people's beliefs. And that kind of casts belief into a weird area that's if you can choose to believe something is true or not. I'm mad at God, so therefore I'm going to believe he doesn't exist. Well, no, you clearly are just mad at the thing you still think exists. I don't believe that a God exists, so I can't be mad at that thing. Because when I was young, when I was 18, my mom died, and a lot of people said, oh, did that have anything to do with your atheism? And I said, no, because I was still a Christian for 10 years after that. I didn't, when she died, I said it even made my faith stronger. So for 10 years, I was still a Christian. And it wasn't until the point where I was actually looking at how the Bible was made, the theological arguments and how poor they really were, and just the overwhelming lack of evidence that I saw from the theistic arguments, and just the very fact that divine hiddenness is a real thing. And I did a video about that, about how that's probably the strongest, even though you don't need an argument to have no belief in a God, it's probably the strongest argument that at least the God of the Bible does not exist, is divine hiddenness. That if there's this supposed good God that loves us and wants us to know that he exists, because that's the most important thing for him, as it says in the Bible, then why doesn't he reveal himself in a more direct, demonstrable way? And there's a lot of apologetics that surround this question, and a lot of theists will say, oh, it's because of this and because of this. But ultimately, if I've honestly tried and come up with no good reason, then that's where it's at. And so yeah, it wasn't just one thing necessarily that made me stop believing. It was kind of an amalgam of things, and it was over a process of time and study, and very hard study. When I finally reread the Bible, as a atheist / Christian in that in between time, and I was just like, man, this doesn't make sense. Like, this is, whether or not a God exists or not is irrelevant to this book being absolutely full of contradiction and confusion. So yeah, that's the short answer. I know it's still kind of a long one.
No, that's fine. So, was there anything? I know you said it was over a period of time and a lot of studying and reading the Bible again. Was there anything that you read that was kind of the tipping point where you were just like, okay, no, I can't believe this anymore?
I don't think there was any one in particular thing that was the tipping point when I was rereading the Bible. There was a lot, especially in the Old Testament, that I was like, oh man, this is grody. Like, there's a lot of really like kind of gnarly stuff in here that it doesn't fit what like you always hear out of the pulpit as far as like the character of God. And I'm like, well, what happened? Like, what changed the character of God between the Old Testament and the New Testament? Coming from also a writer's perspective, it's like, man, did they have like a ghostwriter for the second half? Like, really, this guy really changed. But in a way, he didn't change at all, and that's still apparent because you still have so many things in the New Testament even that were that raised an eyebrow when I read it. I think mainly the idea of atonement too, the idea of, vicarious atonement, with Jesus and the whole salvation plan. When I reread that, as I was kind of questioning and really like thought about it and gave it some thought, I realized that it didn't make any sense. Like it was so convoluted. It was like somebody trying to make a puzzle piece fit that went to a different puzzle. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't make sense that an all-knowing universe creating God would have created that as the plan. that would be the plan for salvation. It just didn't make any sense. And then there was so many unanswered questions with very little answers, that I think that a lot of people that do believe fill in those answers and are content because of their faith, and they want to have answers when sometimes the best we have is I don't know. And
Yeah.
I think that it was all about me being honest with myself too. I think that was a big part of my especially my early atheism was, hey, I want to believe things that are true. And if I don't know, or if I have a lot of doubts about something, that's something's not, something that's not very substantiated or justified, then, rather risking myself look, maybe too foolish in believing something too soon, I'm going to withhold belief until I have sufficient evidence. And I think that's the honest thing to do. So yeah, my position is also that I'm not convinced that there is no God. I'm just unconvinced that there is one. If that makes sense.
Right. So that actually kind of goes into one of my other questions that I had a little bit later on, but I'll actually kind of skip ahead to this question.
Sure. However you want to do it.
Yeah, but so it seems like, people seem to have different meanings when they use the term atheist. So my question was going to be, how do you use the term, and what does atheist mean to you?
Sure. Um, I think it's important to remember when you're dealing with terms like atheism or agnosticism that there is a difference between belief and knowledge. And belief is a subset of knowledge. So you can believe something without knowing it. And I think that for an atheist, I would consider myself and anyone else an atheist if they simply lack a belief in a god or gods. The idea that you are not convinced that a god or gods exist. There are theists out there that believe in God but do not know that that God exists. So in a way, they're kind of like agnostic theists. They believe that a God exists, but they don't know it. Whereas I both do not know and do not believe, but I am not convinced that that God does not exist. Now, there are certain, proposed gods that I am pretty sure don't exist because either they, are contradictory or, they're presented in a way that is illogical, uh, like the God of the Bible. Like I am 99% sure that that God does not exist based on like going off the Bible. It doesn't mean that that God doesn't exist. It just means that if you are defining that God out of that book, it doesn't make sense, and that's fine.
Mhm.
He may exist, and that is how he is, But as far as my definition of atheism goes, it's basically if you are not convinced that a God exists. Like if I say, "Hey, do you believe in God?" and you say, "I don't know, I'm not sure," you actually probably might be an atheist if you either don't know or aren't sure, because belief is a positive, whereas kind of the neutral state is just I don't know. And I think that that's why the term agnostic atheist is a thing. And I guess that would be the closest way I would represent myself, is that I'm an atheist who does not believe and also does not know that a God exists. So yeah, basically lacking a belief in a God or gods.
Hey, thank you. Um, so uh, going back to the question I skipped before. So when you were deconstructing your faith and you were leaving Christianity,
Hmm.
how did you feel about leaving? Were you scared, nervous, relieved? What feelings were there?
Sure. Yeah, this was the hardest part of it for sure, because a lot of our friends, were and are Christians. A lot of, especially my wife's family, most of them. In fact, I can't think of really any of them that aren't Christians. That it's a concerning thing, especially when you are in a fundamentalist church. There's not a lot of tolerance for unbelief. So it's scary to think of how that's going to affect the people around you that you care about and that you love very much, and the fact that you haven't changed as a person in the way you act just because this belief has changed. Because yes, beliefs inform actions, but I believe that bad people are going to do bad things and good people are going to do good things. Uh, if most of the time, obviously there are outliers, and morality is a huge spectrum. And but for someone that that you've been in a relationship with, or been in your life for years and years and years, them suddenly believing in God or not believing in God is not going to or should not radically change their actions and their feelings towards you, especially. So that's something that was in the back of my mind, thinking, well, I don't feel like anything else except my belief has changed. I'm still me. I still like pretty much the same things, except now I'm more free because I'm not shackled to these other harmful beliefs that thankfully for me were only harmful to me, really, because I wasn't uh, voting at the time. I wasn't, imposing my religious beliefs on others. Besides, I guess, witnessing could be considered an imposition. But, as far as like, I'm not, directly harming people with my actions that are informed by my religion. The only person I might have been harming, and I was harming, was myself through the beliefs, because it was affecting the way I chose to live my life. So when I left, the relieving thing was, oh man, all these harmful beliefs that I had about my own life and concerning how I should not act within my own life and things I should look at or watch or listen to or talk about, all these things suddenly were now open to me, and it felt so much more natural and more real to be able to do that. you know of course, the guilt that is there with a lot of these things can still affect people when they deconvert. It affects my wife a lot more than it does me. Thankfully, I'm not super affected by it, but my wife is. There's a lot of people that are affected by these residual feelings of either fear or guilt when they leave a religion that kind of uses certain, I hate to say scare tactics, but that's kind of what I've come to view it as, with hell, with punishment, with creating very negative connotations around things that are normal and natural to either want or enjoy. So leaving was at one hand scary, because of how others would perceive me, especially the label of atheist. There's so many atheists out there that don't want to accept the label of atheist because of the label itself, because it's a very it's been smeared, so long, for so long in this country, in America in particular, as a negative thing, and there's so many straw man descriptions about atheism that it's scary. And then you have the other hand, which is like, wait, all these things that I really placed such huge importance on and revolved kind of my own life around, I have no foundation for it. So in a way, it was kind of, yes, a relief that was gone. Somebody, I forgot who famously said it, but it's like, what do you replace, once you become, irreligious, or once you become an atheist, what do you replace it with? I think it might have been Hitchens that said, what do you replace cancer with once it's gone? It's gone. For me, it was scary. I had a little bit of existential dread as well, when I deconverted, because, if you're told and you believe your whole life that you're essentially immortal, that you're going to continue living after you die in this world, that you're going to keep on living, and then you realize one day that there's no reason to believe that's true, it's kind of like a punch in the gut. You feel like you don't really have any hope anymore for that. And so I felt that for a while. I dealt with that for a while, where I was like, I can't imagine not existing. It felt like I was promised $1 million, and then now it just got taken away from me. But then eventually it became one of the greatest things ever, because I realized that, life is even sweeter when it's finite, and we have just a short amount of time to make an impact, and to do something with our lives and to enjoy life every day. So it turned into a good thing eventually, but I went through the very angsty existential phase of like, no, I'm going to die and that's going to be it. And that'll, lights out, man, lights out, that kind of thing, So yeah, there was a lot of, a lot of feelings about leaving the faith, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, you kind of started going into this in the previous question, but
Mm-hmm.
is there anything else that, since becoming an atheist, are there any other ways your life has changed, or, what ways has it stayed the same?
Sure. I think 90% of my life has stayed the same. I haven't, like, my music tastes haven't changed. My food tastes haven't changed. You know, I think the biggest change, and it really might make all the difference for me, is that I care a lot more now, which seems like it can be very antithetical to what a lot of people that maybe don't know anything about atheism would think. Like, you think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, atheists don't care, and it's true. I am somewhat of a nihilist, but I still care. Like, I believe ultimately nothing matters, but I'm a positive, optimistic nihilist. I believe, yeah, nothing matters, but you should still care about what you want to care about, because this is it, baby. Like, that's pretty much my approach. Like, if there's something you really care about, go for it, and do it. Become the caring, compassionate person you want to be, and reach out and be a part of the community, be a part of what you want to be a part of, because this is your one shot, as far as we know. I mean, if there is an after, then that's a bonus, but like, I feel like as a Christian, I was very complacent with my life, and just kind of going with the flow. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, because there's plenty of atheists out there that do that as well, and that's fine. But for me, it kind of put a fire under my ass a little bit, and was like, hey, this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal, like, this is your life, and it's ending 1 second at a time, Um, and so while I did get kind of bummed about that at first, I ended up turning it around and seeing it as a really positive thing. So I think that it's made me become a lot more aware of how I care about things and people. And I'd like to think it's made me a little bit more compassionate overall.
Okay. So, going along with that, you said you care more now about things. What are some things that you care about or are passionate about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I started caring a lot more about politics when I became an atheist, because I realized that, like, one of the real ways to change things, at least in America, is with your vote. So I mean, I did start getting involved with politics. I started. I think it came down to a more basic, like, day to day thing too, where I, like, would look at somebody, or like look at a situation, and realize that, man, this interaction that I'm having with this person right now, or this time I'm getting to spend with whoever, is so much more precious now, because we just don't know how long we have. And I think that is the biggest change. I did start becoming more active politically. I wanted to speak out a little bit more on things that I feel matter, because I think that we should try to make the world a better place. I think that something that's kind of rooted in a lot of fundamentalist Christianity, excuse me, is the kind of, I don't care really about, like, the earth, for instance, or like the environment, like global warming's a hoax kind of thing, because Jesus is coming back, and this earth is going to be destroyed and made anew. Jesus is going to make a new one, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So if you believe that literally, like, I did, and like so many fundamentalist Christians do, then there's not really a big impetus to care about things like the environment, or even politics, which, people do or don't. Some people treat it like a sport, um, but for me, it was like, oh no, man, this is it. This earth is it. Like, we got to take care of it. So, like, the people that come after us will have it nice, or as nice as we can have it for them,
Yeah.
and, voting. And also, just, I think, being aware in every conversation and every interaction that I had with people, to just treat them with the most decency, and like the kindness I can, uh, because I just started valuing more. I just started valuing the interactions more, I guess, because I realized that, like, this is it, savor it. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, as far as, like, what changed, and then what I started valuing. Just everything, honestly. Like, I know that sounds really cliche, but, like, life became more beautiful and more full because of it being finite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's cool. That's awesome. Um, we have a couple of comments coming in.
Okay.
So Farah, please tell me how to pronounce your name right, because I don't know. I feel like I will always mess it up. But she says, "Good afternoon. Just now received the notification. Glad you could join us." Steve said, "Hey, hi, Steve." Um, exactly. So I think she was agreeing with what you were saying. So.
Oh, great. Thank you for coming in and watching.
Yeah. So, um, let's see, where was I? So let's I wanted to ask a little bit about your friends and family. I know you
Mhm.
touched on this a little bit earlier, but
Mhm.
when you did tell your friends and family that you were no longer a believer, you consider yourself an atheist, how
Mhm.
did they react?
Right. Well, my friends that are either Christians, that if they're more fundamental, like I was, I feel like they haven't really. I didn't have to tell them because they kind of found out with my channel. So it kind of was just a thing. I didn't have to like tell them. They just kind of find out. They kind of found out, and they haven't really brought it up, and I'm fine with that. If they're not going to hound me about it, that's great. Um, but my very close friend that I had from school, I was really worried about because I don't have like a big social circle. I'm kind of a keep it close to the chest kind of guy, with people. As far as like really really good friends, and I was worried to tell him, but then I realized once we were talking about it that he actually was pretty much in the same boat I was. We had just never talked about it. We had the same kind of similar background, and I realized that, oh man, he's actually an atheist too, but we never really had that discussion. So that was cool. As far as family goes, I don't have personally a lot of family left on my end of sides of things. I already came from a very small family anyway. I never knew my father's side of the family anyway, so it was just my mother's side. And my mother's gone, my grandma's gone. I have some cousins. My eldest cousin, he knows, and he's agnostic, and I've known he was agnostic, since I was a kid. I remember being young and actually trying to like witness to him. Um, and my aunt is, I don't know if she's really a Christian. She believes in some supernatural kinds of things. I don't know really where her beliefs stand, but I don't even know if she knows. My wife's family just found out, literally like within the last couple months, and that's been interesting. Not as bad as I thought it could be, but I feel like it's still kind of underneath the surface, and they want to talk about it, but they don't want to talk about it. So you know what? Maybe this question is more of a in progress question right now, because uh, I didn't go to each individual person in my life and like texted them and was like, hey, I'm an atheist now. Like I just kind of started doing my channel 6 months ago, and I was kind of like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now because it really affected me, and I felt like it was important. So yeah, I don't really know how a lot of my still Christian friends feel about it. I'm sure that they are not thrilled. I know a lot of like people I've talked to that that have reached out to me either on my channel or on like my Facebook posts or something. A lot of them have tried to basically reason me back to Christianity. I had an old pastor, we had a discussion on FaceTime, and, we had several Facebook conversations, but, he just, he obviously he did not convince me to come back to Christianity. He did not provide me any surprising evidence that I had not heard before. So yeah, there's been the occasional person being like, hey, what are you doing with your YouTube channel? I thought you were a Christian. What about this? What about this? Have you heard about William Lane Craig? Things like this where you're like, yes, yes, yes. These things I've heard of these things before, and but I welcome any discussion. I mean, I would love to have discussions with anyone who wants to have discussions with me, so long as it doesn't turn into a yelling and screaming argument, which I would never let that get to be where I am, because I know, how to handle myself in an argument or a conversation.
Yeah.
But it can definitely be a high level of tension when you're dealing with somebody that has a very I guess, faith-based belief. I want to say that, you
Mhm.
know, like they haven't maybe explored it a lot themselves. Maybe they don't have a lot of really stellar reasons for their belief. It was just, you know, they were born into the religion, and their parents
Mhm.
were religious, and then, you know, they don't have a lot of ammo really, and so it can be kind of frustrating for them when they don't understand why someone else uh, changed their mind. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Um, a couple more comments that life should be lived to the fullest. Agree.
True.
Absolutely. Yep. So, now I know you and your wife have
Hmm.
both left Christianity.
Hmm.
Um, did that happen at the same time, or were you already non-believers when you guys met? How did that
Oh
look?
no, no. This is and this is probably the part of the story that I'm the most grateful for, because you know, we've been married for, you know, over 9 years, and when we married, you know, we were both Christians, and we, you know, we got married in a church. You know, it was a dry wedding, no alcohol. You know, uh, and you know, we were both, you know, going to church together, and luckily, when I started really questioning, unbeknownst to me, she had been questioning actually for longer than I had. I was kind of the first person that really talked to her about it, and then that kind of gave her, I guess, a sense of permission that she could be like, "Oh, well, that's great that you felt like that, because I've also felt like that for a while now. I just haven't talked to you about it." And I think that's the thing that is the most surprising to people that maybe don't talk about these things a lot, is that, like, you look at any church, you know, you look at any family that has a lot of religious people in it, there are more atheists in that family than you realize. You just don't know because they don't say anything, and they just kind of go with the flow because they don't either care enough to like out themselves as an atheist and be like, "Hey, I don't believe this," because they know it's going to cause, you know, waves essentially. So there's some secret atheists in every religion and every religious family and in every church. And I was just very thankful that me and my wife were able to kind of deconvert at the same time. You know, I remember going through these questions and being like, "Hey, have you ever thought about this?" And she was either like, "Yeah, I've been thinking about that for a while," or "No, I haven't. Tell me more." So we were able to really kind of bounce things off of each other, and kind of go through the process together. Now, she was a little bit more reluctant to accept the label of atheist um, than I was. And I think partly that's because she was a Christian literally like from the second she could talk, you know, because she was raised in a fundamentalist family for her whole life. You know, she grew up in it more than I did, and you know, so she left, you know, over 20 years of Christianity. So yeah, I was just thankful that we were able to have that, you know, happen together, because I've heard a lot of stories about, you know, couples, you know, not working out when one of them has deconverted and the other hasn't. Um, so yeah, it was really good that we were on the same wavelength, you know, with each other, and having those questions, and we were able to kind of help see where each other, you know, was coming from a little bit better, kind of like a mirror, you know, instead of just me having my own thoughts and her having her own thoughts. You know, we were able to kind of help flesh the ideas out, you know. So yeah, no, I'm really really grateful that that happened, because I can't imagine what would have happened. You know, I mean, obviously, I don't think we would have broken up or anything, you know, but I know that that would have caused a lot of tension between us, and especially between her family too, because then I would have looked like the only, you know, I would have looked like the, you know, one that was leading her astray or something like that, you know. So the,
Mhm.
you know, our beliefs changed based on our own investigations, and she surprised me that she had already been thinking about it before I had. And I thought I was in my own little bubble, just thinking about it, you know, and being like, "Oh, how do I tell her?" I remember the first time we sat down to a meal, and she was like, "Are we going to pray?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, okay. Like she didn't, it didn't upset her as much as I thought it was going to. And that kind of got me thinking, like, maybe she's on more of the same wavelength as me, So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. I'm glad that it worked out the way it is, but I'm sure, it would have been okay, even if it didn't.
Mm, yeah, I think, yeah, you were really lucky in those regards, because I've definitely heard from others that
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy when one partner leaves and the other one still believes.
Yeah.
So,
I think
um,
it can also depend on like how fundamental you are in the religion. Like if you're kind of just like a cultural Christian, then it might not be as big of a deal, unless you're actually talking about theology itself. But if you're like an active fundamental Christian that is very either politically active with your religious beliefs, or whatever, or especially if you have children too. We don't have children, so like I think that can be a big point of contention.
yeah,
Uh, for families that are trying to raise children, and one of them wants them to go to church, the other one's like, no, this time can be much better used.
yeah,
um, but so yeah, that's what happens, which I'm very, like I said, I'm very thankful.
yeah. Um, so we've got some comments. So far said there are more of us than people know, which
True.
is true.
Oh
True.
yeah.
I was actually, when I started talking to others in the atheist community, I was actually surprised at how many um, people there are that are atheists, and like you said, a lot that are still in the closet and haven't
Mm-hmm.
um, said anything yet because of those tensions and
Mm-hmm.
conflict in relationships and stuff. Um, Steve said, I'm married to a Christian. She knows I'm an atheist. So that's good.
That's
um,
good. I mean, at least you guys know.
yeah, yeah, you're both know where each other's at. You're honest.
Mm-hmm.
Barrett said, can't imagine if my husband were a Christian, would be tough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the fundamentalist Christian thing is a hard no for me.
Yeah, it's a hard
I
no
feel
for
like,
us too. We
yeah,
we talk often about how it just blows our mind, some of the things we used to believe, and things we used to talk about together that we're now like, man, it's so wild to think that that's the way we used to think,
mm-hmm,
um, or the things we used to accept. Um, so yeah, no, it's been an amazing transition for sure.
yeah. Um, okay, so let's see here. My next question was, so now that you've left Christianity and you're an atheist,
Mhm.
uh, what do you think happens to us when we die?
Um, well, what we know as far from neurology, it's pretty much the brain is when the brain is dead, anything that we associate with our personality and ourselves dies with it. So I have no reason to believe that any part of us continues after after our brain ceases all function. I have no reason to believe that anything happens after that. We have I think the argument for a soul is rather one of the weakest arguments in theology, just based on certain questions within biology and neurology that just don't jive with the concept of a soul. um, so yeah, I think it's pretty much it. Like when we die, when our brain dies, we die with it, uh, and I don't have any other evidence to suggest that any part of us survives our death.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
um, let's see. Oh, Steve said, we've had some issues, but we worked through them. The best book for mixed faith relationships is Faith in Faith and in Doubt by Dale
Hmm.
McGowan. Okay, that's a good suggestion. I will put that in the description box below after this if anyone wants to check out that book. Wordsmith said, I didn't make it on time, but I'm here now. That's no problem. We're still here, so no problem. Yeah, the replay will be up, so you can always go back when you're done. My mother-in-law blames me for my husband being an atheist.
That's what I was
That
scared
can be
of.
hard.
That's what I was scared of. Yeah.
Yeah, that can be hard.
Yeah.
I started atheism apparently.
Hey, you know what? Own it. You started it. Own it.
Okay. So let's see. Oh, and I think Steve here has a question for you, Sam. Would Sam be interested in joining us for an RFR hangout? So RFR, if you didn't know, is recovery from religion, and they have an online Slack channel for anyone who wants to talk and discuss, and anyone who's going through their own deconversion journey. They can talk with others in there, and just hear from others that are going through the same thing and can help each other out.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, send me, I know you'll have my link, Vanessa, in the on the video. So yeah, Steve, go over to my channel, drop me a line, in a comment or whatever, and I think my email address is also in my about, so you can always email me there. If you're ever thinking about doing a, a hangout or anything, and you want me to be a part of it, absolutely, sure.
Yeah,
Hit me up.
they have they do Zoom hangouts every Friday.
Okay.
So Friday mornings are the usual Zoom hangouts for RFR.
Awesome.
So, let's see here. Yeah, Steve said he's
awesome.
the online director for RFR. So
That's awesome. Good to meet you.
I'll send you his email.
Awesome. Thank you. Great.
And Sarah said, I almost never talk about being an atheist. It usually only happens when someone wants to talk crazy to me. Yeah.
I think the less you're around, religion as an atheist, the less you have to talk about it. But I live in the American South, so it's all around me.
Yeah, that would be hard. Okay, so another question that I had was, so just your YouTube channel is centered around atheism and religion. So why did you create your channel, and kind of why do you want to talk about atheism and religion?
Right. Well, I started thinking about it when shortly after I deconverted, and I realized what an impact certain YouTube channels, certain online resources, certain books, and debates and things because a lot of the debates I watched were on YouTube. And so I realized that this was a huge part of my deconversion because I was able to get all these resources and kind of put them next to each other and look at them all. And I think that kind of planted a little seed being like, you know what, this was really important and this really affected me. Like I lived my life in a certain way to the point where it affected me, in a real way with how I lived my own life. So I felt like if I can help give people the tools to, reason a little bit better, be a little bit more critical about the beliefs they hold, then that's a positive thing because I do want people to believe true things for good reason. So that was kind of my initial mission statement going into the channel. But I also wanted to do it adding in humor and adding in entertainment because that's a big thing for me as somebody who, as an actor as well. I love to entertain. I love when things are funny. And some of the things when I was first deconverting that shocked me and also, offended me deeply, but also got me thinking were stuff that was funny. What a lot of religious people would consider offensive. But stuff that after I was done either getting mad at it or maybe even laughing at it a little bit, it got me thinking too, because there's a lot of truth in humor. And I think that it's a big door for me. When people say like, oh, why do you have to be offensive or whatever? It's like, hey, I'm not offending, a person. I'm offending the belief. I'm criticizing the belief, like I'm not making fun of you as a person for, I'm criticizing the belief itself. And I think that should be completely acceptable. I think beliefs are up for grabs. I think that we should, be able to look at each other's beliefs and say, how reasonable is that? Do you think that has a good foundation? Are you warranted in that belief? So that kind of led me down, epistemology. And that's a big thing that I'm focusing on my channel as well, too, that I hope to do more epistemological interviews and stuff like that on my channel in the future. Why do you believe what you believe?
And I think the thing with beliefs, especially religious beliefs, this is something we kind of talked about in one of my support groups yesterday. But it was like, when you are in the religion, when you're a Christian and stuff, a lot of times your identity is entirely wrapped up into the belief. And so even though, someone may be questioning or even mocking the belief, but not the person, because the identity is so wrapped up in it, it feels like a personal attack against the person.
Me and my wife were just talking about that the other day because with like her family and with other people that will react to hearing that you're an atheist, they've been told and they've believed their whole life that God is love and you can't love without God. So if somebody doesn't believe in God or does not apportion a belief to that God, it's like they are incapable of either loving or being moral or having any kind of basic human decency without a God belief, because they've, like you say, they've so strictly tied morality, love, and their personality to their religious belief, and I think that that's something that I also kind of want to push back against and, show that, morality, the religion does not have a monopoly on morality, essentially, and that's a big thing that I like to talk about, on my channel. And just when I talk about this kind of thing with people, that's a big question that, I ask a lot. It's like, well, if you didn't have a God belief, or you became convinced that a God, you weren't convinced that a God existed, would you start, committing immoral actions? Would you start murdering and raping and all this other stuff? And usually, if they're not being dishonest, they'll say no. And then I say, that's good to know. It's good to know. It's good that you wouldn't do that. So yeah, I think you're right, though. Absolutely, you nailed it. A lot of religion teaches that the only way to be a good person and to love others is through religion. So I think that there's a lot of confusion when it comes to like stepping outside of that parameter. How's that work? Like how does not having that belief work? And it's like, well, it does. It still works without it. It's, you just don't know it works without it because you're still in it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, there's a lot of different misconceptions people have about atheists, but how do you, so now that you are an atheist, how do you feel about religion and people who still practice it, Christians and other religious people that are still in the religion?
Sure. I guess I would kind of consider myself an anti-theist a little bit. A little bit. I guess I'm selective with it because I feel like 80% of the people that would consider themselves religious in this country are probably not super dangerous with their beliefs, except for themselves. And this is kind of where I was too. I feel like if you are kind of just someone who believes in God and believes the Bible's true or believes whatever Holy Scripture is true, um, generally, if you're a moderate, you're the only person you could be hurting is yourself.
Right.
But the more active you get with it, the more extreme you get with it, I think the level of potential danger does go up. Um, it's not always, like you said in the beginning, there's outliers, and it's not the case for everyone. But I think my view of religion right now is that we can theoretically we could do away with religion and replace it with more community based organizations that do the same thing as a lot of like the religious charities do, but just without the Bible fan club, and a lot of the using the Bible as a moral guidebook, when it was written thousands of years ago, when morality evolves, but yet that's something that a lot of Christians seem to pride themselves on, about like God's word never changes. And I've always thought, now, well, that's not a good thing, like it's not a good thing that didn't change, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that probably should have been updated with the times, with our understanding and growing evolution of morality. So I think that overall, if you're a religious person, and I actually had a really good conversation with someone I used to work with who actually ended up deconverting after we had several conversations, um, was basically like, he asked me, do you think that my religious beliefs are harmful? And I said, from what I can tell, your religious beliefs are only harmful to yourself, but that should be reason enough to consider them, because that's where I was, believing things that affected my life in a negative way, and I could be living a much happier life without them. Not to mention that I didn't have a foundation for them, and I think that that's really where I started, was whether or not it's true. Because if something wasn't true and it was not harmful, I still wouldn't want to believe in it, because I want to believe things that are true. That's first and foremost. If
Mhm.
it's like the whole, would you rather believe a helpful lie or a harmful truth? It's like, well, I'd believe the harmful truth because I want to believe the truth. And if it hurts me to believe it, then I have to deal with it and go forward, because there's no way I can rationalize, I don't know, deliberately deluding myself. I don't know. You can't do that. You can't force yourself to believe anything. Um, so yeah, I think that religion as a whole can be replaced, and it eventually will be replaced. I think eventually, on a long enough time scale, it eventually will be. I don't think about totally being replaced, but I think a lot of the fundamental aspects of religion will fall by the wayside as we see more people leave the church. And I know I'm mainly specifically talking about Christianity because that's what I'm familiar with. So don't take this as a across the board, I guess, thing about religion in general. But like, Christianity is slowly dying. It's dying because there's more people on the internet being able to see more information, access to more resources, and have these conversations and have these questions, and people are slowly leaving the church. And it will eventually become a very much a minority, I think, in the country. And I have no problem with church being charitable. I think that's great. I think that that's what they should focus on. But I feel like there's always two sides to the coin, because you can have churches doing great things with charities and stuff, but then you also have giant churches that are pretty much conning their congregants, and pastors are making off like bank robbers. So I think that there's always two sides to the story when it comes to the pros and cons of religion. But I think it comes down to community, right? I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that draws people to the church and keeps them there is the
Mm.
sense of community. And I think until we have a secular alternative, or like a bigger replacement for that sense of community, churches will exist in some way or another, because people really value that community
Mm.
aspect of it. So I think the beliefs are almost secondary to a lot of people that do attend church. but the community aspect of it is very, very strong and very appealing to a lot of people. So I don't think we as social animals will ever get over, wanting to be in a community. I won't.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think it's here to stay in some regard, but I do wish we could, put in a little dose of doubt and skepticism, especially in the fundamental religions. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, that's really well said, um, especially about community, because I noticed for myself, I was like, the only thing that I do actually miss about um, being a Christian was the community
Mm-hmm.
that it gave you, um, and all the things that you would do together. If you're really involved in it, it's not just church on Sundays, but then there's
Mm-hmm.
small groups weekly. There's things that they put on for people to do together. And so that community aspect, I think, was the main thing. I was like, I do miss that, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's where I am too. I think that's why a lot of people are also afraid to question their beliefs, because they have built a place in their community that if they question their beliefs and they end up changing their mind, and that leads them down a road of not being accepted by that community or not feeling comfortable in that community, that can be a very scary proposition.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So, so now, what is your response? Because sometimes believers will ask questions and say things like, well, what if you're wrong? Are you
Hmm.
willing to risk your eternal life on this? The whole Pascal wager
Hmm.
question. So, how do you respond to something like that?
Well, it's kind of a two-part question, right? What if you're wrong? Great. I would love to be proven wrong. Provide me with the sufficient evidence, and I will gladly accept it. It's the reason I became an atheist, because I said, "What if I'm wrong?" I didn't want to be wrong. So that's the great thing about accepting, like, the idea of saying I don't know, or I'm willing to be wrong, is that once you find out you're wrong, guess what? You don't have to be wrong anymore if you can find the right answers. And sometimes there aren't answers, but are you willing to risk your eternal life on this? Um, Demonstrate to me that there's an eternal life, and I'll believe it. This is the Pascal's wager, like you said, to a T. I could be betting on millions of different variants of the same question. uh, what if I bet on the wrong God, or the wrong heaven, or the wrong hell? um, you have to demonstrate the specifics of this question. It's a bit of a false dichotomy, because you're
Mhm.
presenting it as only two choices, whereas there's actually limitless
Mhm.
choices to this question. So what if you're wrong? Great, prove me wrong, or demonstrate that I am wrong. Are you willing to risk your eternal life on this? If there's an eternal life, then probably not. But you have to prove that first. You have to demonstrate that first. So
Right.
yeah. I haven't got asked specifically a lot of Pascal wager related questions, but the few I have, I've tried to instruct them on why that's a kind of fallacious question. Yeah.
Mhm. I, since you were talking earlier about humor and injecting humor and entertainment into
Hmm.
these things, I love how I don't know who originally posted this, but someone had posted online that I saw a clip from a Simpson episode where he's like, well, what if we're wrong and we're just making God madder and madder each week? You know?
Yes, that is great. I love that clip. In fact, I used that clip in one of my videos. I might have actually used it in my Pascal's wager video, because I
Yeah.
love The Simpsons, especially the old Simpsons episodes, and I use that. It's great. It's a great line. Great bit of writing, and absolutely 100% true, because
Mm-hmm.
in order for Pascal's wager to work, you have to accept that there's only two choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I know throughout this interview we've talked about some different stereotypes and misconceptions
Mhm.
surrounding atheism. But what do you think are the most common stereotypes or misconceptions you've heard, and how would you respond to them?
Sure. Yeah. Definitely that this one comes up a lot, but it's still kind of befuddling to me. It's that atheists are Satan worshipers, that we worship
Mm-hmm.
Satan, and I think this really comes from especially a lot of the fundamental Christianity side of things, where I used to be, because in that, in that framework, anyone that is not a Christian is actually worshiping the devil. Like, that is actually what they are doing. If you are not a Christian, you serve Satan. Even if you don't think you do, you do. So that's kind of the that's kind of the framework that they come from. So the very fact that they don't believe in any of it, I think, usually doesn't really pass over a lot of those people's minds. But that's a big one. Another big one is that they're immoral. That they don't. Believe in anything, they don't believe in anything, whereas I had my old pastor, say that. It's like, well, what hope do you have? What, you don't believe in anything then? It's like, no, it's not true. I just don't accept. I don't currently hold a belief in God, in a God. Um, so I think that that's a big one, is that, they're all bitter or immoral, or that, if they are an atheist that deconverted, that they're, mad at God, or they got burned by the church. And so now that they're so mad at God, and they have to, you know, speak out against God or anything like that. The whole angry at God thing is another one, they have a hard time separating their emotions from the logic of it, and believe, and not being, uh, being influenced by your emotions, sure, but not ultimately being decided by your emotions. Like, my emotions surrounding, deconverting had nothing to do with the truth propositions of either side of the claim, right? Like, I can get mad at the church, or people, the way they treated me in church, but it'd be like if I was in a UFO fan club, right? And like, we all went out to go watch UFOs and stuff, and they treated me badly. Does that mean I'm going to stop believing in UFOs? Because some people in the group treated me badly? I might leave the group, but I don't think that I'll stop believing in UFOs just because they treated me badly. You know what I mean? Like, I feel
Mhm.
like it maybe can lead you to question some things, but
Yeah.
ultimately, that's not what's going to dictate your belief. I like the comments right there. Common misconception: atheists are agnostics in denial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another big one. Is that, like, oh, you do believe in God, you just are, and this kind of goes along with you're mad at God. Like, you do believe in God, you're just mad at him. Um,
Mhm.
and that's why you're an atheist, but he exists. Um, yeah, that's kind of what I take from that. But yeah, I think that the angry atheist is a thing as well, and I think that there is a grain of truth in that. Again, if you have realized that, especially a good chunk of your life has been surrounded, you've surrounded a good chunk of your life around something that doesn't have a foundation, and you realize that, yeah, it can make you kind of angry. It can make you a little bit frustrated that, you spent so much time and effort, um, believing these things that, you don't have any good reason to believe. And so I think the angry atheist is kind of more of a phase than a personality type, although I'm sure there are people out there that are just angry. But they might not be angry because they're an atheist. There's a lot of angry people that are Christians.
Mhm.
There's a lot of angry people that are, non-believers, So I think it's definitely can be easy to paint with a broad brush when you're characterizing people, with their beliefs. But there's a lot more nuance than I think that you can allow for a lot more nuances. I guess what I'm trying to say in your characterizations, because
Yeah.
again, I saw someone else commented, I was raised atheist. Um, so somebody that's raised atheist, that
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't even use the, oh, well, did you get mad at, did God burn you somehow in the church, or did somebody that was religious treat you poorly? They can't even use that on someone who's like a natural non-believer, um,
Right.
because they don't have any, like, you didn't deconvert, you never converted to begin with. So, yeah, I think that there are definitely misconceptions, and to be fair, there are misconceptions about Christians and stuff out there too. But I think for atheism, yeah, that those are the big ones, and they're usually pushed by people that are religious because they just don't understand what atheism is. They lack an understanding, and they tend to strawman atheism. So yeah,
Yeah. I agree with what Eva says here. Yeah, you're mad at the church. You should try this church. That's
right,
sometimes what happens. It's like, oh, you just didn't know the right
right,
beliefs, or you didn't know the right things. Or, um,
yeah.
and she says the angry atheists are as hard to want to listen to as the angry Christian, no matter the faith or lack of one. Preaching is preaching. Yep.
Sure. Sure, yeah, delivery is definitely important. I think that's why
Mhm.
it's always good to, when you're talking about these things, like, people need to remember that, like, atheism isn't a religion. It's not, a monolith, like you were saying in the beginning. And just because I lack a belief, it doesn't necessarily mean that I want other people to. But here's what I want people to consider their beliefs,
Mhm.
whether they stay Christian or whether they become an atheist. Ultimately, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, to me, it doesn't matter. You're the one that it matters, because if your beliefs are causing harm to yourself, then maybe considering it and realizing that you don't have a good reason, you can change your life for the better. But your belief as a Christian, you'll believe that everyone needs to believe like you, or else they're going to literally be tortured forever. So I have a lot of sympathy for people that do actually still believe the way I used to, the evangelical Christian side of things, because if you truly believe that there are people that are going to go and burn in hell, and especially people you love and you care about, like, that is, like, for you not to tell people, or for you not to care about people, like, you're a
Yeah.
bad Christian.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously, like, I don't love it when I hear it, but, like, I'll gladly talk to people about it, because I understand that
Mhm.
most of the time they're coming from a place of love,
Yeah.
if they truly believe the, like, literal fundamentalist Christian side of things.
Right. Um, Sarah said, I think atheist content on YouTube does better if it is angry. I find that people are less aggressive in person. Interesting.
I can agree with that too, to a certain extent. I
Mhm.
do. I mean, it's content. When you're making a
Yeah.
YouTube video, you got to let your emotions go out, and I'm sure my candid conversations are a lot probably more straightforward and less entertaining than when I'm making a YouTube video about something, because I have the floor and I'm able to exaggerate things for effect, not lie, of course, but, like, I'm able
Mhm.
to be emotional and
Right.
really let my feelings come out. And I think that that's just because it's a YouTube video.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay, so I have one more question left on here. So
Okay.
if anyone watching the live has any questions they want to drop into the chat box, we'll have a Q&A session after this, so you can ask any questions you've got. Um, but my last question for you here is, what do you think writers should know when trying to write an atheist character?
Sure. I guess a big part of it would surround the context of your story, and how much the person's religious belief or lack thereof will play a part in the story. Because if it doesn't really have anything to do with the story, it may not even be worth mentioning it. But if you're really digging in and getting to the, bottom of the character, or really, if it's the main character or something like that, then I think that um, you can, like I said before, really play around with how nuanced you want it to be, how much of a part of the person it is. Obviously, if you're writing a character like me who, runs a YouTube channel about atheism and about religion, then it's probably a bigger part of my character than if you were writing somebody who just lacks a belief in God, but, I don't know, does something completely different. You know what I mean? Like, I think context is everything. I don't think trying to shoehorn something into a story is a good idea if it just doesn't fit. It has to work with the story. Sometimes you can maybe surprise your reader too by putting in a little snippet of that person's belief without really going into it, because I think sometimes keeping some things hidden and secretive about the character that you're writing about creates a more full picture of the character a little bit. Honestly, if you put everything on the table, then it's maybe not as interesting.
Mhm.
Leave a little bit to for the reader to dig in on their own, and if they find out that the character is an atheist, and that informs his actions or his beliefs, then based on what the character does, the reader will then look back and say, oh, that's right, the character doesn't believe in God. Is that why they did that? Or maybe that's not why they did that and it's something else. I think leaving it up in the air a little bit and to have the reader kind of do some work with that is it might be even better than putting it all on the table. That is, unless the atheism is a big part of the story, which it could be. It could be a big part of the story. So if you're writing it as a big part of the story, again, yeah, atheists are not a monolith, so you can really you write them however you want, because atheism is just the answer to one question. Do you believe in God? Everything else is kind of up for grabs. Because it could be a crapshoot. So, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I like that. And like you said, there's, there's a lot of nuance to things. So, uh, you know, I don't think anyone can put everything out on the table anyway.
Yeah.
But there are ways that you can subtly hint at it.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not, if it's not a big part of the story, it doesn't need to be laid out like you said.
Right.
But depends on the type of story you're writing.
Right. Like my wife still doesn't really like to say "God damn it." She doesn't like to say it because she's never said it as a Christian. Like, she's only, like, literally after she deconverted, I heard her say it one time because she was really angry, and she hasn't said it after that because she just doesn't like to, because she still is in that, like, I don't like to hear myself say that, even though she knows there's nothing wrong with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the indoctrination. So, like, that's kind of a flip side too. You have a character that's in a situation that every other character is saying "God damn it, motherfucker," all this kind of stuff. And I hope it's okay to say that. Sorry, I should have asked.
Go ahead.
Maybe bleep it out in the stream. But if you say these things and you have a character that won't say those things, that can tell you a lot about that character, right? It can tell you, oh,
Right.
maybe they don't curse, and maybe there's a reason why they don't curse. They value not saying that word for some reason. So yeah, I think you're right, Vanessa. Like, the subtleties can tell you more than putting it all on the table.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if we have any questions. Um, uh, if religion is the only reason one does a thing, or the only reason they don't do a thing, it isn't faith, it's indoctrination. Agreed that it's healthiest to constantly search for knowledge. Yep.
Yeah. A big part is a lot of people that are, especially in fundamentalist churches, they probably have not traveled a lot. They probably have not, met a lot of people with differing perspectives. I see this a lot. I've been through a lot of small towns, especially in the South, and I've seen it firsthand. That the smaller the town, the less likely people get out of that town. That's just the way it is. You either leave right after high school and never come back, or you're kind of stuck there forever. And unfortunately, a lot of that does allow indoctrination to just kind of stay, because you never meet anyone from a different point of view, a different
Right.
perspective, offering any kind of different information. So there's a little bit of a tribalistic mindset when it comes to small-minded thinking, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so it says atheists are just as diverse as any other group. Yeah,
Yep,
exactly.
absolutely.
Um, can do atheists still say OMG? Or, oh my God,
OMG.
oh my God, and other variations. Always wondered if that's okay since slang.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah. We can still, even if we don't believe, we can still say it. In fact, we can own it even more because we don't have any fear of blasphemy. We can say, God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
Say, oh my God. Because when I was a Christian, we couldn't even say OMG. That was something that was looked like that was taking the Lord's name in vain. I mean, that's how strict it
Wow.
was. You know, you couldn't say OMG because that represented God.
Uh,
So you couldn't say that. So yeah, that was yeah. Even oh my gosh was like, oh, I know what that's. It's so silly though because it's like a
yeah.
replacement for a replacement, you know.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, like I said, yeah. There's a very big difference from how I've controlled my language when I was a Christian versus now. You know, I used
Mm-hmm.
to never say that, but now I let it fly all the time and it feels great.
Yeah. And, I think, as atheists, it's like, because we know it's like, it's just a word, as in the other word, you know, I don't think
Right.
we really have issues with saying them. So,
Mm-mm.
like, someone sneezes, I'm still going to say, bless you. Um, you
Now
know,
I do say Gesundheit now. I do. I
oh,
do say Gesundheit. Yep,
interesting.
I
Oh,
do. Which is just a personal preference thing. Just because it's the same. It's for the same reason I don't pray anymore over my food. I'll just thank who prepared it. You know, because I'm not going to be
mhm.
like I'm going to magically enchant this food right now. You know, and say may the Lord bless this food. You know, so I'm not gonna. I mean, I get saying God bless you out of habit. But I've consciously made a decision, and maybe that's just my way of being really
Mhm.
petty. But I say
Well,
Gesundheit now.
I've
Yeah.
never, even as a Christian, I never said God bless you. I just said bless you. So
Oh yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why I still don't have an issue saying it. Now I guess I don't know.
True. And
Um,
I think it does have to do with context though, right? Because like if I'm angry and I just say, "Ah, god damn it." That's a lot different than like saying god damn you, like
mhm,
it's a big difference. And that's kind of like one of the first things I realized like when I was looking at like language after I deconverted. I was like there's no bad words. There's only ways to use them badly. You know what I mean? Like it's all in the context. It's like if I bash my thumb and I say, son of a bitch, but then if I call someone a son of a bitch, that's a whole different thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all about context, though.
Um, let's see. I do not see any other questions. Um, Eva said, "I say bless you, but I don't imply God. God is for yeah." Um, any word can be a bad word. Right. And
Yeah,
language
it's about
changes over
context.
time. So that's one thing
Yeah.
we talked about in my writing
Hmm.
group before is, language evolves
Hmm.
and meanings change over time. So it's something
Yeah,
to be aware
for sure.
of. Okay. I don't see any other questions here. So um, I guess I will start wrapping it up. But thank you for everyone who joined us today live. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for being here. Leave a comment below and let me know um, your thoughts on anything we've talked about and discussed. I hope this was super helpful and informative to everyone watching. So thank you again, Sam, for being here today. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
yeah, I love this. So, if you guys want to follow Sam and see more of his videos, like I said earlier, the link to his YouTube channel is in the description box below.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to watch more in this Writing Diversely series, the playlist is also in the description box, so you can check that out. And if you are a writer and you're wanting to learn more about writing different diverse characters, I do also have a online course, how to write diverse characters. So all of that information will be down below. So thanks everyone for being here. Next month, I will be doing an interview with Ryan Douglas, who wrote the book The Taking of Jake Livingston. And so we're going to be talking about Black queer characters next month. So definitely come back on December 2nd for that interview and check that out. So that is pretty much all I have for today. Oh, and yes, like Sarah reminded me, hit the like button on your way out. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I'm at work, gotta run. No problem. Thank you for being here, Sarah. Thank you, everyone who stayed and chatted with us and left great comments and questions. So I will see you guys next month on December 2nd. Bye.